Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of the world. This is Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Everyone's a special guest. I'm joined by Rose Pascarell. She is, I work in student affairs, and I call her the big boss lady. She is the VP of Student Affairs, or we call it University Life here at George Mason. And as you know, I've been doing somewhat of a mini-series of educational leaders. I've done various deans around the college, and I wanted to make sure that Rose has the opportunity to share her journey for those that are aspiring to be in higher ed, but maybe not so the route of academia, but student affairs. So I thought that this conversation would be great today. But Rose, before we get into this episode, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. And first of all, appreciate being on your podcast. I've listened to Phil, listened to you, and appreciate all the good work that you're doing and sharing your message and other folks' messages as well. So, sure, my title, as you said, Vice President for University Life here at Mason. Have been in this role for 11 years, but have been in various roles at Mason for about 25 years. Native New Yorker. Have a 20-year-old son who's a sophomore in college, so I come to this work most recently not just as someone who, helps support students, but also is on the receiving end of students who are accessing that help, which is actually a great view, and love this place, love being here.
Maybe this is a tidbit. I don't believe your son goes here. Was that like a conscious decision? Like, hey, I don't want to be at the same school as my mom. I gotta go somewhere else. So
it's hard to explain to your son that at a school of 40,000, he's not going to see you every day if he comes here. And as much as I tried to convince him that I wouldn't be checking in at in his residence hall room, yes, and that he wasn't going to pass me on the street, and that I wasn't going to be sitting at his table at lunchtime. Yeah. I think he needed a little space, which I totally supported. What I will say is I said to him, wherever you go, close or far, I want you to live on campus, because the experience of living on campus is such a growth experience, I think, for all students. But yeah, in the end, he wanted a little more distance from me, which I appreciate. Also, I was about to say, I think the joke too is like, you got ears on the streets anyway. So it's like, no matter where you go, right. I know the leaders. We have a network, so I'll check in on you somehow. Yeah, I didn't promise him that I wouldn't be listening. I will say that. Yeah. So he's a smart kid.
And maybe even taking it to that point too, before we go into your background, I guess while you were navigating your son's journey, when you went to his orientation, I guess you knew all the questions to ask, like, what is your student life here? What activities? The holistic experience.
Yeah, so, and it took him a while to decide. So we went to several orientation and admission events at other schools. And I did feel like I had a leg up in paying attention to probably the kind of questions that I ask as a parent that maybe others don't think about until they're in the moment and need a particular health service or need a particular academic support. So, I appreciated being able to ask that. And, what I love about higher education is, there are differences among all of us, public, private, large, and small, but there's, pretty much a strong commitment to student support. It looks different on different campuses, but I definitely appreciated looking at different models at different schools.
And my last question, did you kind of go to these orientations like undercover boss and I'm saying, didn't blatantly tell people what you're doing? You're just trying to be like a quote unquote normal parent?
So I was only an undercover boss to myself. I never told anybody what I did. I will say I went to a couple schools where I knew folks, and so I wasn't undercover. And I will also say that my son is at a great institution, and I'll tell you one move-in story. When I moved him in this past fall into a residence hall that was the oldest residence hall on campus, and again, housing is part of university life. moved him into his room, and when we opened the door, there was a bat on the floor. And in the moment, and he actually thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, Batman.
Right? I was a little bit like, when I think about this, maybe not a great look to have the bat in your room at move-in. But what I did appreciate is I could get right to the housing folks and the facilities folks and knew who to talk to. And that bat was quickly removed. But it's a great story that he'll remember the rest of his life. I'll remember it too. Probably in a different way, but I'll remember it.
Batman.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the origin story.
Sure.
You're from New York.
Yeah.
You know, college experience. Where'd you go to college?
Yeah.
How did that navigate?
Yeah.
Were you first gen yourself?
Yeah,
Just that
sure.
kind of stuff.
So first gen college student, grew up in upstate New York, graduated from community college, and at the time was real interested in criminal justice and peace studies, and then continued on through the State University of New York system, SUNY, and continued work in both sociology and in criminal justice. And when I was a college student, like so many college students, didn't have a sense of what I wanted to do, right? And really became interested in sociology and felt like it answered a lot of questions for me about the way the world operates, and continued in that track. And then, I'm a proud Mason alum, sociology and women's studies, and was actually set to do a PhD at Rutgers, and was offered a position here back in the day to write a proposal for the opening of a Women's Studies Research and Resource Center.
Which we do now have.
And that hooked me, and I decided I was going to stay for a couple of years. And, 20-something years later, I sit here talking to you.
No, so was as a transfer student and seeing the parallels, was that kind of what attracted you to Mason? Because I think that's one of Mason's big, nationwide draws is that we have such a great partnership with the local community college. Yeah. But you also, I've heard a lot of other systems, like Tennessee has a really robust community college. The New York system had that too.
Yeah, I mean they did. Again, not near the same connections that we have now with Advance. I mean, when we did Nova Mason Advance, I mean, we really, I would say, set a path for other community college, four-year institution partnerships, and we host so many delegations from different universities who are trying to create their own version of Advance. But I've always thought Mason was a transfer-friendly school. I've always said that, and but that didn't mean that students weren't kind of losing some credits. What I love about Advance is, you go to community college because mostly you're looking to save money with the hopes of transferring. And a lot of times the community college experience is just the opposite. You end up spending more money because credits don't transfer. So I went to a community college that had a strong partnership with the SUNY system in New York, and it was easy to make that transition. And so so that was a great personal experience for me, and I love that is something that has grown and that we offer to students here.
I think I used to work in that space with community college, and some people say they want to get out as soon as they can. Some people are like, stay a little bit longer and get the full associates so that you have some form of degree. What was
I got the associates. And again, my path has always been what's happening in the present moment and what do I want to do next. And so I got the associates because I wasn't sure I wanted to continue.
Gotcha.
And then I continued and wasn't sure I wanted to continue to graduate school. And then I continued. At the time that I was in school, for my associates and studying criminal justice, I was working for the New York State Division of Parole. And so I was just real interested in that profession, and at the time didn't necessarily need a college degree to stay focused on that. But honestly, I love learning, and so really wanted to stay in college for as long as I could. And clearly, I've never left.
Now, thinking about that, we talk about the prison, was it school to prison pipeline, but then also you seeing that working in education, did you, always just macro thinking about how education is a way to like kind of stay out of trouble and, thinking about like, when you were doing your parole stuff, like these people could have, used education as a way to continue to upskill and maybe get ingrained back into the workforce rather than, that recidivism rate where they go back to prison afterwards.
Sure. I think, back then, I think I was really focused on the folks whose cases I were looking at really came out of, low income neighborhoods or impoverished neighborhoods. So I think I thought more about higher education, not just as, the beauty and the value of education, but also as a step into the middle class and
social
that,
mobility.
social mobility. And that's why I love universities programs where they go into the prisons or formerly incarcerated, students come to campus. And I know that's something that, we've focused on here, and that I hope that is a program that we have here in a more robust way in the future.
Also, just in fact that, I think one of the best ratings every time President Washington talks was not the stats about, how much students make, but it was also like where we rank in regards to social mobility.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
It actually says, education is the gateway to a better life. And I love that a lot of students at Mason view it not like, oh, I'm just going to get a job. I'm like, generationally,
yes,
going to college will open doors for others after me.
I mean, what's so interesting to me about, this national narrative that's been constructed is higher ed worth it? And if you look at, the workforce studies over the course of someone's lifetime, it's still the case that someone with a degree makes about $1 million more during the course of their lifetime than someone without a degree. It's still the case that, the majority of jobs that, have decent, pay rates require a degree. And so the narrative kind of isn't in sync with the data at this point. Doesn't mean that there aren't things higher ed needs to change, but the data doesn't reflect this notion that higher ed isn't worth it. So that's kind of interesting to me to dispel those myths. Even when you talk about student debt, again, think about we all buy cars and we take out 4 or 5 year loans, and when we look at the average amount that a student who goes to Mason, the average amount of debt that they graduate with, it's less than buying a new car. But again, I think it gets contextualized differently. The return on investment far outweighs, what the cost of attendance
like looking
is.
at stock, like you don't see it right in your face.
Yeah.
And that long term, I love the longitudinal thing. Like maybe if we followed someone maybe immediately after college, like, oh man, I'm not making the money. But if we followed them like a long-term study, like 20 years comparable to someone else, they would make that $1 million gap. And you see it in the long term, but you won't see it right in front of your face.
Now, what I love about Mason is, having said all that, we still have students who affordability is difficult, right? And so what I love about Mason's, kind of access goals is that for those students who may need more financial assistance to get here, we've got the Mason Virginia Promise Program. We've got the direct enrollment program. We've got a real focus on financial aid and emergency aid. So I think talking about the return on investment holistically is a great message for students. And then when it comes down to it, if you're paying your way and you can't afford it, you can't afford it. Right. So what I love about Mason is then we're like, okay, well, wait, there's some options here as well. And, with both Pell Grants and state aid and Mason scholarships that hopefully pieces together the pathway to college.
Now, so as someone that's right in front of your face, I love that because I think that's the mindset that I have too. Everyone's like, how'd you get here? I was like, I just did one thing and one thing.
Yeah.
Where was this, I'm going to get a career? No one really wakes up one day and says, I want to be a higher ed professional. And I think it's more so.
True.
That's like, if we did like a quick study, I think that's the most I fell into career of all time is staying in
kind of interesting,
education.
isn't it?
You know, so how did that start for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of folks, as you know, in student affairs and university life have graduate degrees in higher education or in, higher education leadership or administration. That wasn't my path. My path was sociology. But I really, again, became real interested in the workings of the institution outside of the classroom. And so, like kind of coming to understand the fullness of what gets offered, though, or what students, can walk away with a college degree, particularly a public institution that really is, historically also focused on, kind of having students understand democratic ideals, having students understand their responsibility and civic engagement. All of that kind of interested me. And, I had my own experiences in community college that kind of piqued my interest in what it meant to have a mentor or what it meant to have people in your, kind of in your corner and helping you succeed, and how that made a difference, how much of a difference that made for me as a first-gen kid who wasn't quite sure that I was smart enough, that I could afford it, that I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with it. Like, my own personal experience and then watching that happen when I was in school really piqued my interest. And I think when I had an opportunity to have a kind of entry-level job in higher ed, that just paved the way. I mean, I just became real interested in that.
So 2 things. One, when you got to your 4-year institution, were you involved in student leadership, student government? Was that, or you had to work through college?
Yeah, I worked the whole time.
Okay.
So I didn't take advantage of, all the student engagement, student leadership opportunities. Loved my classes, loved learning, loved connecting with other people, but the people that I was connecting with are mostly folks who were in class with me.
Okay.
But my community college experience, right, prior to 4-year institution, I actually came to know the faculty members who were teaching in my department. And, my own story is, I quit school 3 times when I was in community college.
Go ahead.
And I did. It's I
like
to say I quit 3 times before I decided to stop quitting.
Okay.
When I decided to stop quitting, I was in a class, and the requirement that the faculty member put forward was a 25-page, it was a criminal justice class, a 25-page personal analysis. And, as a proud first-gen kid from a working-class family, I thought, well, I'm not writing 25 pages about, my personal development. Like, I'm just not going to share that.
It's about you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so I went to the faculty member, who was a woman, who I liked, who was a great teacher. And, I was kind of proud of my decision. I went in her office and said, hey, look, I just want to tell you, I'm going to quit school, and not going to do this assignment because I really don't believe this is the assignment that I want to do. I don't think it's an appropriate assignment. But I want to come and be honest with you. It has nothing to do with you, right? Proud. I'm going to quit your class, and I'm actually quitting school. And she looked at me and said, well, instead of the assignment, why don't you write a paper on the importance of dissent?
Okay. She flipped it on you.
She flipped it on me.
Uno reverse card.
And it was the first, it was kind of the first time I was like,
okay.
Oh, okay. Challenge taken. And honestly, did that paper, and that just hooked me in a way that I hadn't been. Both that, there was a faculty member who really was willing to work with me. Mm-hmm. And, honestly, I don't think if that happened, we would be talking. I probably
you see the long term.
Yeah.
The two.
Yeah.
Was it the decision in the woods?
Yeah.
Right? You see it now. But you didn't see it then.
I didn't see it then. But what I did know was that, knowing a faculty or staff member and having kind of someone rooting for me absolutely made a difference. And so again, as I got to understand this field of student affairs and student university life, I don't think students discern between faculty and staff.
No,
I think, right? It's like we're all faculty, administrative faculty or instructional faculty.
Many times I get called Dr. Wilkerson.
Yeah.
I'm not even a professor.
Yeah. I don't think students discern that way. Yeah. And I think that's one of the strongest responsibilities and roles that folks in university life play, which is, to kind of walk students through. And I always like to say that at our best, we take the edge off the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And because let's not forget, this is a $1 billion operation.
It's a system. Like
yeah,
any other system.
You come in and it's big and it's large, and I think we meet most everyone's needs, but you have to oftentimes have a little bit of help in figuring out how to get your needs met. And I've often felt like, one of our unspoken roles is to help students navigate and really take the edge off what it means to operate in a big bureaucratic
100%.
organization.
100%. I mean, I think that's probably one of my biggest joys of working is that, like, I feel like I see myself. I live here. I grew up here, so I always see myself as like, I wish I would have navigated this space with someone like me, which I did have a lot of people. And I say, like, I did have people like me, but dang, now I got this hidden curriculum. I had this responsibility to pass it on, because I could have used that help when I was a student.
Yeah.
So what was your first entry level? You said that dip. What was your entry level into higher ed?
Yeah, it was this proposal writing for the Women's Center. So started here, and I had worked a little bit. I'll take it back. I'd worked a little bit in the SUNY Albany system, but in an affirmative action office, and had done that work for the state of New York for a department for a while, and learned a lot from that experience. But that was all short term. But really, kind of, immersing myself into the more external, outside of the curriculum workings of the institution started then. And when that proposal got funded and, the center was created, again, the students who made their way to that center were less focused on research help, which is what I thought my job was, and more focused on, honestly, the personal and developmental issues that they were facing that was threatening their ability to continue on in college, right?
Okay, so more like the barriers, like, I say this, like, we always think about grades, but like if you're hungry, then you can't, like
if
that.
You're hungry,
or don't have a house or a place to stay,
right?
You're involved in a domestic violence incident. Like, how you going to study when you have relationship?
That's right. I mean, if you're having mental health challenges, if you're taking a class that actually triggers your memory of in the case of a women's center, sexual violence that may have occurred in your past, like, all of that stops you from moving forward. And that's, I think, one of the, real important responsibilities of the university, if we're really talking about helping students be successful. Like, what do we have in place to help students, kind of respond to and move past or integrate, the challenges that they have. And so that was what met me at the door at the Women's Center, which was dramatically different than what I thought. But it just really made me very interested in, one, helping folks get connected with the resources they need and kind of moving past those challenges.
So take us, what was your first, first thought about when you came down here to Mason? SUNY, New York is different. New York is so different. New York is different than Virginia.
Are you in New York?
No, but you met my late father-in-law, right?
Yeah.
And so I was so proud when you met him when he was taking classes here.
I remember that.
He's from Teaneck, And I say that to say I'm Virginia. My whole family's Virginia. My dad grew up in Virginia. But like when I vice versa gone up to New York, I've seen this is a different place than I've seen it's different than here. So
when I first came here, people didn't understand what I was saying because of my New York accent. And when I go back now, I go back to Brooklyn. And usually when I come back, friends say to me, I always can tell when you spend the weekend in New York because we don't understand you again. It's faster. And it's faster. But this place, to be honest, not Virginia so much, Virginia now, but when I decided to stay here, it was really about this place and what I thought this place was offering me, but also, its whole vibe around the way we think about students, the way we really focus on diversity as as our strength,
Yeah.
right? And but then it's more than just the tagline, right? And so that really,
Drew you in.
yeah, it really did.
Where was the decision? You said 25 years, and I'm sure there's like different inflection points. When was it like the real inflection point? Like, I'm staying here longer. This is,
Yep.
I'm in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Well, again, I made the commitment to stay here for 2 years, and then I was moving on to get my PhD and deferred, acceptance into a program
The Rutgers
and
program.
a teaching assistantship. And when those 2 years were up, I just didn't want to leave.
Got it.
And at least then, I think now it's a little bit different. But then I, was also able, with a graduate degree, to teach in the sociology department and teach in women's studies and teach in what was then New Century College. And I love, I loved that experience. And then, kind of slowly and fully moved into the administrative side.
Can we talk about that transition? How was that? Like, was that I told people were asking me what I want to do with a PhD, right? If I'm currently studying, and I feel like there's 3 pillars to the university experience. There's academia, there's student affairs, which we have, and then there's the business, right?
Yeah.
Like, the provosts, the deans, and all
Sure.
that stuff. Where was your, in that triage? You had a little depth. You're in the academic world with the women's studies.
Yeah.
You were in the administrative world. How did you make the decision to continue in one of those?
One of the advantages that I had coming up is that in that first position, even though I was in an administrative position, most of the folks that I was working with were faculty that were here at Mason. And so I really kind of got a taste of how, just kind of the different way that that faculty approach the work versus, a student affairs or an administrative position. But I got so taken over time, again, with the opportunity to kind of help students move past their challenges. Yeah. And then as I moved into more senior roles, to really create systems and structures that allow for that
the big picture
to happen, that really was what piqued my interest. For a long period of time, I was, both teaching a course or two and also in an administrative role. But it shifted. It shifted. And you were asking me earlier about PhD, no PhD. At the time that I decided not to pursue a PhD, that didn't prohibit me from teaching undergraduate students, and obviously from being in this role. I think the profession has shifted a lot. I think most of the VPs coming up really do have EDDs or PhDs. Not all. I think it depends. I think it depends on the institution, the type, the college, someone's experience. We're seeing a move where even there are presidencies at smaller institutions where presidents don't have PhDs. So,
I was about to say, I know that's not Virginia.
Yeah, it's not.
Because I did my little, I always for me, and when I do on LinkedIn or whatever, when I look at what you need to be, I look at where people are, and I'm okay, presidents or deans got to have something, right? But that's interesting to see.
I'm in kind of the last, I would say the last quarter of my career. But if I was given advice to folks who were coming in who want to be a VP, I would absolutely say, pursue your EDD or PhD. And I love that because the profession has been professionalized, and I think there's a lot more credibility right now.
You've seen the evolution of it, and the evolution is now. It was very practitioner based, but now we're thinking about all these student affair theories. Theories and I like that word, professionalized.
I think there's a stronger understanding across the institution of the ways in which university life or student affairs supports student success. Even when you talk about those pillars, I like to break down the academia and the student support or administrative pillars, because students don't experience students don't come to the university and experience themselves as this part is, academia.
Yep.
This part is student engagement. It's one experience, right?
It's one for them.
It's one for them,
Yeah,
right?
I get that
But
for
to the
sure.
extent that we can break down, kind of whether it's pillars or silos, the extent
Yes.
that we can do that, and I think that you're seeing way more people in student affairs who are also teaching, who have their PhDs. Like, I think that's real important in how higher ed is changing, but also our ability to really kind of increase student success. Because, if we're breaking down those silos, then students aren't experiencing them in the same way.
Yeah, and I love that you said that because, I didn't know, as a student, going back to my mind and 18 years old, I ain't thinking about how, this grant and money and that part, the academics is affecting my experience in history class. I'm just trying to be cool with that history professor.
Right.
And then I didn't think about like, okay, if I'm having a hard time, I need to go to our counseling services. I didn't think like how like they're entwined with each other, and then like thinking about the business of it, like, these people that are, more so in the financial sector of the universities advocating for my tuition dollars. So for me, you're right, like as a student, I don't see the intersection of them.
Yeah.
But now on the opposite end, as a practitioner, I'm seeing like, oh yeah, I need to, as a person that works in just career services, I need to know like how to help the students so they don't experience that Mason shuffle and know the resource and know who to go to and all these, like I need to know the business side of the university.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see like, as I quote unquote become an adult, that shift. But I'm starting to also, as we said, professionalize. I'm also starting to meet or connect with students though that are knowing that side better.
Yeah.
I think of some student leaders, they already know about, they're going to like Mason lobbies, so they know about the politics of higher ed.
That's right.
And then they know about advocating for dining services.
That's right.
They know, so I'm seeing some students coming through this new wave, as you said, it's shifting, where students are more like, they know the three pillars and they're getting involved in those three.
Well, what I
things.
love about that, and even those examples, I love working with students who are really, not only kind of engaged in their studies, but are really interested in making this place a better, stronger place for students.
Yes.
So when I'm working with students who, whether it's dining or housing or advising or coaching or whatever the services or counseling, who are looking at, who are advocating for needs in my own division. I so appreciate that, right? Because when I was a student, I was working full time. I was going to class.
Yeah.
I knew what I didn't like about the institutions that I was in, but I was not at all about kind of intervening in any way. I just didn't have the time. I wish somebody did, but I didn't, right?
Yes.
So when students at Mason are involved and engaged and actually care enough, because they're making it better, not just for themselves, but for the next students that comes along. Like I completely appreciate that. And I do think there's more students who are interested in understanding the business of higher ed.
Yes, they're seeing it.
Yeah.
I think it's just, as you said, I love that word. Maybe I'll change that to call it, maybe the title of this episode would be the professionalism of higher ed. Or whatever.
Of student affairs,
Yeah, because it's shifting, and you've seen that shift. One thing I was thinking about is like, how do you still feel like, I was joking with someone. This is like one of the first times I've been in this building. I've worked here, like the ivory tower. How do you feel like you get out of this ivory tower and still feel like you're connected to the community and understand what's going on? Because I could see this, like I'm in this nice suite. This is really nice, and thinking like we're looking at the macro, but then like you're making these macro decisions. But like you said, these students are like, okay, where's my voice?
So your question makes me think about two things. When I first got this position, I had the choice to move to this space, and we're sitting in a conference room. My office is behind us. The president's office is in front of us. The provost and I share a wall.
Yes.
When I made the decision or was offered to move to this building or to stay in Sub 1, where most of the university life. Man, I did not want to leave my colleagues in Sub 1. And I talked to folks I trust around me, and the advice that I got was, you really need to be able to represent your division and network with folks and be in a space where, the conversations that happen in the hallways involve you, right?
Yes.
And
it does make space matters.
you know, right.
Sure.
And when there's a student issue, the president can just open his door and walk into your office, or the provost can do the same, and that's going to make a difference. And so I, you know, at the time, again, I didn't really want to leave where I was, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I think that was the best decision that I ever could have made on behalf of the division, because it really did place university life, you know, with the other senior leaders. You know, part of this work is so about connecting with the other divisions, academic and non-academic, you know, throughout the institution. I mean, I think when you're not in a VP role, you necessarily should be looking down and focusing on improving the work and the services of the division. But in the VP role, I mean, my job is really focused on student success across the institution. And that's not just university life, right? I mean, that is working with faculty and working with colleagues in various divisions. And so the ability to do that was important in making that move here. Now, having said that, I've, you know, got an office that I've tried to make as student friendly as possible. I mean, the one thing I didn't want to lose was direct contact with students.
Direct contact, yep.
And so what I would say is, you know, if you're just working in Sub 1, like you're seeing students. It's part of your daily routine, right? Not so much here the case. And so what I realized I needed to do was really embed into my schedule a structure where I'm consistently meeting with students. So every 2 weeks, I meet with the student body president and vice president. You have
a touch point.
Yeah, there are 4 undergraduate students who actually work on this floor that work in university life. Because again, I want that connection. There are student meetings that happen for me every single week. So.
And you want to bring you bring the student, when you have student meetings
here,
you're bringing them here so they can see this, bring them to this space.
Here. Yeah. Don't be intimidated about this space. This is your space too. And and you know, if the president's door is open, I can pop my head in and introduce students to him or to the provost. And so I would say the main difference is, you know, I just need to be more intentional about you know, connecting with students, but I am. And so that happens. So I don't, you know, what I wish I had more time to do is just kind of walk the campus. That's what I wish I had more time.
Hey, I don't got as many meetings as you. So
I mean, I like
doing laps randomly in the Johnson Center just to see people.
Yeah, because you know, you've been here too. So you inevitably see people. You connect with people. And so, you know, I like to do that. I wish I had more time to do that. But I do feel like I spend a good amount of time also meeting with students.
Is that, and then I guess we're, you know, kind of laying the plane to your contemporaries. Is that something that y'all have to discuss? Like, how do y'all do it? How do, you know, contemporaries and other vice presidents, how do I still stay engaged?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think depending on the institution, the VP role gets structured differently. So I think when I think about some of my colleagues at other schools, and really regardless of size, the VP kind of stays focused at the senior level and doesn't necessarily have as much contact, either direct contact, either with students or with leaders as much in the division. One of the things for me about coming up through university life at George Mason is I absolutely kind of respect and understand the critical role that practitioners play, because that's what I was, right? And so I like connecting with folks who are doing the work or directing the work. You know, I have good friends and colleagues who just are engaged differently, and that's okay. I mean, that's I think there are different models and different ways to do that. And, you know, again, I like more direct connections with folks, and others actually I think stay focused at on the work of the senior level. I guess I like to do a little bit of both, and because Mason is so in my blood, like that's just how it works for me. But I think there are different models. I love my relationships with my colleagues. They're particularly at this point in time when higher ed over the last few years, 4 or 5 years, has really continued to shift, and student demographics have really continued to shift. It's been real important to connect with other VPs of other institutions, not just in Virginia, but other places, and just, honestly be able to talk through the challenges that we all have.
Excellent, excellent. So we're going to go to my next segment of my show. It's called Shot for Shot.
Okay.
You get to ask me any random question. I get to ask you any random question. You want to go first? I'll go first.
You go first.
All right. Favorite Mason. I love this one. Just normal. What's your favorite Mason moment? And it doesn't have to be academic. Just favorite Mason moment since you've been here.
Since I've been here?
Yeah. Top. Okay. I mean, I know. So let's just say it would be in my.
I'll do it.
We'll do one, but it'd be in your top three.
It's hard for me. I mean, I was here in 2006 for the Final Four.
Yes,
I was
please.
here.
Yes.
I was a practitioner then. I sat on a bus and brought students on a bus to Indianapolis to the Final Four.
You actually took a bus there.
We took 3 student buses, and 3 University Life folks were in each of the buses.
How many people were in that bus? Like 100 students?
There was probably 50 students on a bus. 56. We took a couple hundred students, and we took a bus
here
from
to here to Indianapolis.
Yeah, it was a long drive.
That's what I said. That's like what, 10 hours?
Yeah, it was a long time. And
y'all stay in a hotel?
We stayed in a hotel. Students stayed in a hotel, and
how'd you corral that? So first of all, you had to know first of all, to make it to that round was like a week or 2, right? So then as soon as they say, "Oh, we're going to the Final Four," take me through that. You was put out a call,
Yeah, we did. We decided
fill up the bus.
And it wasn't hard, right? Okay. I mean, at the time, because there was such excitement about Mason. But yeah, we took. I think it was about 150 students. Oh. And we went to Indianapolis, and of course, at the time, and I think it's the way it works now. The tickets you get are for everything, and so when Mason lost, we were still there because
okay.
I mean, people were down and out, but the excitement of just being in the Final Four was, awesome. And this is why I think athletics has such an opportunity. And there's such a growing partnership between athletics and university life, because I like to say that is a level of student engagement that I don't think we can create, awesome. In the same way, right? Yeah. So you have that kind of team spirit and that kind of opportunity. It just, energizes you in a pretty amazing way. So that I would say that's one of my all-time favorite Mason moments.
And a bus. Maybe we'll make it.
And the bus.
The bus.
I remember the bus.
I'll go there. All right, what's your question for me?
Well, how'd you get to Mason?
Oh, my Mason journey. So quintessential, didn't know what I wanted to do. So I graduated with a history degree, so I rock with that.
Okay.
Liberal arts.
Yeah.
From James Madison. And then didn't do any career stuff and got a job at a school with children with special needs called Alternative Paths Training School here in Alexandria, Virginia.
Yeah.
Just luckily, just a body. My friend got a job. He got us all jobs,
yeah.
right? And I was like, this ain't it. I needed, it was a very intense job. And I was like, okay, I guess, what I'm supposed to do is get a master's, right? Think about this is an entry-level job. I guess to get a better job, you got to get a master's. I got a history degree. My wife, she already got her master's in social work. And I was like, I like working with people. My wife always told me I should have done social work at JMU. But I told her, when I told her, I was like, there's no dudes in that program. That was literally my rationale.
Some people would have thought that was a good thing, but okay.
No, I was like, there was no guys. And I was like, it's all women and feelings. I'm not that. I'm a history, whatever. And so, but I was like, I want to be in the school system. So I looked at all the programs, and I was like, okay, I don't want to be a history teacher. Maybe I'll be a school counselor, because you help with people and whatever. So I looked up, and George Mason was there, and they had the focus on multiculturalism, all that. I didn't look at none of that. All I looked was they didn't require the GRE. So I remember actually being in the classroom, intense class, applying to Mason in Alexandria. And the thing that they focused on in this counseling program was your commitment to the community.
Yeah.
Have you helped people before? Mm-hmm. So I used my experience at that school. And then we did an interview, which was cool. And funny story about that, but I don't want to take too long on that. I'll share it after the show. But I got in, and that was it, right? I was in the counseling program. This is changed my life. And then I remember specifically in that counseling program, we had to take a career counseling class. Yeah. And so we had a guest, his name, actually Lewis said he was one guest. We had multiple guests.
Really?
Lewis Forrest was one guest, and that's where we connected. And I bothered him, asked him questions. And then we had Ken Garant,
Yeah,
who was
I
actually
remember
from
Ken.
the Career Center.
Yep.
And he said, I know that you need to do an internship. And I was school counseling, but I switched over to the community one.
Yeah.
Where you had to find your own internship. And he's like, you need to do an internship to graduate. And I was like, I want to do it there. So I bothered him for 6 months.
Wow.
I did like, hey, can I do an informational interview? Can I send you a copy of my resume ahead of time?
Yeah.
He said, Philip, leave me alone. You got the internship. He actually said that. He was like, bro, chill. And that was it. Literally, that was it. I did my internship from 2011 to 2012 at Career Services.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to stay here. I like working here.
Yeah.
I like working Career Services, but I was going to Sub 1. I liked always being on a college campus. I liked helping people.
Yeah.
I liked doing those career appointments with people that were like me.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what hooked me. Usually it's like a lot of people, and I joke, but I think there's 3 people in our office because we still have this continuous partnership with the counseling program.
Yeah.
3 people in our office did that internship like me.
Got it.
So that was a great gateway.
Wow,
right?
that's great.
We had to do an internship in our counseling program. We had to do this experiential learning experience by being an intern in our office. And a lot of people like me were like, this is where I want to stay.
And they did it in Career Services.
Yeah.
Wow.
So shout out to that.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of pipeline.
Yeah, I love that.
But yeah, I don't know. That was it. Like, I didn't dream about no career in higher ed. I was just trying to not
do the next thing.
I was just trying to get more money because I knew you had to get a master's. And then I just like wanted to have a job that was close to home and work at a university. This is very plain. A university that was one that I would see myself going to and I cared about.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a product of this.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't want to work in, this elitist, and I say that, but like, institution with, I like the Mason institution of this is accessible social mobility. Yeah. There are people like me. Yeah. I mean, I'm not first gen, my parents, but it was like me. Like, I'm a product of Northern Virginia. Yeah. I like that.
Well, one of the things I love about so many people who work here, particularly folks in university life, is that the opportunity to work at a place where you buy into the mission and you buy into the core value. I mean, not everybody has that, right? Sometimes I feel like it's easy to take that for granted, but I think so many of us that work here really believe in the mission and the core values. And like, how many people have the opportunity to really be working with different people every single day, impacting people's lives, hopefully positively. I mean, that's pretty amazing opportunity that we all have. You have that. You do that.
When I did that, when I got that award for Spirit of Giving,
the
donor thing, mainly most people, it was all about faculty and staff that give back. It was a reception for faculty and staff that also are alumni. So a lot of them were alum that concurrently give back. And it was like because a lot of people give back to this university monetary in their service because they actually benefited from themselves. Yeah. So like Mason was my gateway for social mobility. Yeah. So therefore I'm a product of it. Of course I'm a buy into it because I was a product of that. Yes. Right. And so I think that's special.
Side plug, people. Your host just received this award that he's talking about, to much applause and adoration. And so I'm glad that you mentioned it.
Yeah, it was cool. The main thing I was cool about was that my wife got to see that. I don't just walk around all day.
That's right. You're actually doing something. They know you.
Yeah. So what are you doing? One joke, quick thing. She'd be like, all right, are you on your way home? I'm like, yeah, but we share our location. And then she'll hit me with the eye emojis, like, why are you still on campus? And I was like, I'm doing stuff. Yeah. Because, I don't know, I just feel like I'm sucked in here. She's like, come home. I'm like, all right, I'm on my way. And she'll wait till my dot leaves.
I love it. So, that's great that she got to see you acknowledged for your work and your country, right?
Ask my kids what my son Bennett actually thought. Yeah, what does dad do all day? He just walk around talking to people. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so this is the part of the show called Shout Outs and Plugs. Yeah. Where you get to show love to anyone you want to show love to. Okay. And then plugs. These are things that I will make sure to put in the show notes so that listeners can, as a resource to follow up on. So shout outs and plugs. Okay.
Well, I first want to do a shout out to you. Appreciate the opportunity and thanks for spreading your positive messages and also just talking with people about their experiences. I would think this is really helpful to folks who are thinking about higher ed or who are in higher ed. So first shout out to you. I'm also just going to shout out to my kid, James, my son, because James, I told the bat story. So I hope that was okay, kid. But I
man.
told the bat story, and this will be memorialized forever. And hope you're not embarrassed by that.
And then plugs, I would say more so like, what are some things that, the listeners should be aware of as it relates to George Mason or university life?
Yeah, let me just mention 3 things that come to mind that I'd want people to know about. First is particularly in this environment where sometimes employment is unclear. For students, we have a Stay Mason Emergency Fund. Stay Mason, one word. And that fund was created to support students who experienced an emergency in the middle of a year, right? So you've already done the FAFSA, you've already gotten your aid, and then something happens. You lose a job, your parents lose a job. An emergency happens in your family that you can't respond to because you don't have enough finances. So I have an absolute appreciation for this fund, and I want folks to remember that it's out there. That's one thing. Second thing,
and real quick, one young lady did share that at the reception.
Oh, really?
She was a recipient of that. And so that's a very powerful thing.
That's great. Yeah, that's the power to keep students in school. What we know is that if students stop out, they tend not to come back. And so we want to do everything we can to keep people here, but also help them respond when they are experiencing an emergency. That's one thing. Other thing I want to mention, just because I'm both excited about this and the need still exists, we're about to make plans to transition to a larger Patriot Pantry, to respond to food insecurity on our campus. And in the next year, there'll be a new space, but the Patriot Pantry is always happy to receive donations. And
also, like when you say donations, monetary, but also non-perishable goods.
Yes, non-perishable goods. And then the third thing is something that I'm excited about. In the last month, we have opened our first ever spiritual center on campus. And we are living in a time and an environment over the last few years where we see students, not just students, but students who really want to be able to express their faith and spiritual beliefs, and that is part of their development, and also is often a great support for them if they're going through challenging times. So as we focus strongly on mental health, what we know is that not everybody wants to go see a counselor, but maybe somebody wants to go and sit and meditate or pray. And so the Spiritual Center is just opened on campus. And
is it a building?
It's a building, yeah. It's actually it's the previous site in Fenwick A.
Okay.
That was the testing center for COVID that we all used to go to.
Gonna use it.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is hot news because I literally
It is
was
hot
like,
news.
what are we doing for that building? I saw it so much.
It is hot news. There's a soft opening. It's open right now, but there's going to be an official formal opening. But
it's in the heart of campus.
Yeah,
too.
we're overseeing that in university life, and again, really wanting students to be able to have a space and a place where they can gather and express their own faith, but also connect with other people around faith and spiritual issues. So those are the 3 things that were on my mind when you said that.
That's excellent. Well, Positive Philter listeners, first of all, thank you. This has been a
Absolutely.
great show. For those that are listening, as you know, every episode is dedicated to the memory of my late father-in-law, Jeff Kirsch. So please consider donating to the Jeff Kirsch Anti-Hunger Fund for all his work combating food insecurity. If you're a part of the Mason Nation, please consider submitting a Patch for Patriots to show love and kindness to someone else. Give this episode a like, a review, whatever, on all the platforms. Please share it, and have a good day.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.